On October 31st, 1995, Julia went to the Vatican and attended Mass celebrated by the Holy Father in his private chapel at the invitation of the Office of the Holy Father. There also were other visitors from Korea and France. Julia later testified that when she received communion, she began smelling a strong fragrance of roses and the scent of blood. The sacred host in her mouth was becoming larger and changing into visible flesh and blood. Monsignor Namik Pak, who also came from Korea with Julia and her husband, saw the change in the sacred host and instructed her to go to the back of the chapel and wait. Julia began meditating while holding the Eucharist in her mouth so that it could be witnessed by the Holy Father and others. Julia said that while she was meditating, she saw bright light shining upon the Holy Father and the area around him. She also saw baby angels in the light, dancing and guarding the Holy Father. At that moment, Julia received a message from the Blessed Mother. In her message, the Blessed Mother asked the Holy Father to teach the importance of the Mass, the importance of the Sacrament of Confession, and the sacred mystery of the Holy Eucharist to all her children in the world who do not know them yet. The whole text of the message is contained in the book Messages of Love. Julia is standing in line, waiting for the Holy Father. She is still holding the Eucharist in her mouth. Monsignor Pak is standing next to her. This photograph was taken a few minutes before the Holy Father saw the Eucharist changed into visible flesh and blood in Julia's mouth. Monsignor Pak later testified that the Eucharist in Julia's mouth formed the shape of a heart. On June 30, 1996, there was an overnight prayer service in the chapel in Naju, celebrating the 11th anniversary of Our Lady's first weeping in Naju. At about 3 a.m. on July 1st, Julia saw the image of Jesus on the wooden crucifix above the Blessed Mother statue becoming alive and blood coming out of his 7 wounds. Soon the blood turned into white sacred hosts and came down. Julia tried to grab them, but suddenly the powerful light from the crucifix penetrated Julia's body, making her open her mouth and scream loudly with pain. At that moment, the sacred host entered Julia's mouth. The Blessed Mother statue turned into the joyful and smiling, living Blessed Mother. She gave messages to Julia. The penetration of the light from the crucifix through Julia's body caused bleeding from both of her hands. These stigmata were witnessed by Father Raymond Spies, Father Francis Su, and others present. At about 1 p.m. on the next day, July 2nd, Julia was praying in the chapel together with Father Spies and other pilgrims. Julia again saw light radiating from the crucifix. The powerful light penetrated Julia's body, causing extreme pain. Julia fell down on the floor and began to bleed from her two hands. She also received a message from the Blessed Mother. Later in the same afternoon, Julia visited two hospitals in the city of Gwangju for an examination of her stigmata following Father Spies' instructions. Two doctors who examined Julia only found tiny holes on her palms which appeared to have been caused by needles. These holes must have been made by the light beams from the crucifix. The doctors said that these holes were too small to explain the large amount of bleeding from Julia's hands. They wrote statements testifying that Julia's wounds and bleeding had no medical explanation. On September 17, 1996, Julia attended Mass in the cathedral in Cebu, Malaysia. The main celebrant of the Mass was Bishop Dominic Su. During communion, the sacred host again changed into visible flesh and blood in Julia's mouth, which was the 15th Eucharistic miracle in connection with Naju and Julia. Bishop Su personally witnessed this phenomenon and later acknowledged it as a Eucharistic miracle in an official letter addressed to Archbishop Giovanni Bolaitis, the apostolic pronunciate in Korea at that time. Bishop Su also sent a copy of this letter to other papal nuncios in several other countries.